Okie dokie, I'll read this. You're home for all the 70s and 80s artists we all grew up with. You're listening to the Shakeman show.
Slow down, Jim.
Uh, you're home for all the 70s and 80s artists we all grew up with. You're listening to the Shakeman show.
Welcome to Rockipedia. Tonight's featured artist is Ronnie James Dio. Well, he was born Ronnie James Paradova, born on June 10th, 1942 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where he resided from his dad's service in the Army during World War II. Relocated to Cortland, New York, started his music career in 1957 with fellow New York musicians, forming the 50s doo-wop band called the Vegas Kings.
Remembering all your young dreams, the way you ran behind me, your plans to marry me someday, the love you gave so blindly, but you were like a sister, and 3 or 4 years.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am not pulling your leg. That is actually Dio singing lead vocal there. Ronnie would later become Ronnie Dio in the Prophets, but that's later on in the story. But anyway, that's how Ronnie started out with the Vegas Kings, the 50 doo-wop band. Okay, time to move on. Let's get a little bit more into his rock career, I should say. A year later, the Vegas Kings changed their name to Ronnie and the Rumblers. And then in 1960, when Ronnie changed his name to Ronnie Dio, they became Ronnie Dio and the Prophets. So let's get to the real story about Ronnie James Dio here. In 1972, Ronnie changed to playing doo-wop to rock and roll by starting a band called Elf. They toured and opened a lot for Deep Purple. Deep Purple guitarist Richie Blackmore took notice of Ronnie when he opened up for his band. This was at the time when Richie and his band Deep Purple were not getting along musically, and he left Deep Purple and recruited Ronnie to join him in his new band, which was called Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. Richie claimed he liked Ronnie because he was so easy to work with. So they went into the studio together to record an album and released it on August 4th, 1975, entitled Richie Blackmore's Rainbow. Now we're talking. Okay, a good 70s classic sounding rock album. Some good riffs, and of course, powerful vocals. Some good rockin' songs, like my favorite being the song you just heard, Man on the Silver Mountain. Besides some fillers on the album, I still give it about a 3 out of 5 stars for a good 70s classic rock album. Blackmore and Ronnie went on to record 2 more albums together. One album called Rising in May of 1976 and Long Live Rock and Roll in April of 1978, which are great rocket albums that I give both a 5 out of 5 stars because both albums were kick-ass albums. But the short-lived working relationship ended between Blackmore and Ronnie in 1979 when Richie decided he wanted to go in a more commercial musical route and brought in lead singer Graham Bonnet to sing for his band. Well, it didn't take long for Ronnie to continue his music career. He met Black Sabbath's guitarist Tony Iommi at the Rainbow in L.A. in 1979. Iommi happened to be looking for a replacement singer in his band right after the departure of Ozzy Osbourne. The two hit it off when they met up at Iommi's house and wrote Children of the Sea on the very first day they got together to talk about music and write a little bit. Ronnie joined Sabbath and they went in to record their first album together, released on April 25th, 1980, entitled Heaven and Hell. Ah, yes. With the dark, ripping riffs of Iommi and the powerful vocals of Dio made for a good match, and it shows on this album. Killer tracks like the title track, Heaven and Hell, Children of the Sea, Neon Nights, and Lady Evil. This album kicks major ass. I give it a 5 out of 5 stars. They wasted no time after the success of Heaven and Hell. They went right back into the studio to release their second album together, released on November 4th, 1981, entitled Mob Rules. Another good rock album, comes up a little short of Heaven and Hell, though. Very well received in the UK, not as well in the US. Don't get me wrong, it's a good album. I still will give it a 3 out of 5 stars. This album also featured Vinny Appice on the drums. Dio tried to take more control of the band when they were mixing their next album, which was a live album, which was called Live Evil. Well, this control that Dio was trying to get, which caused conflict between him and the engineer who would mix the album all day long, only to have Ronnie come in that night to totally change everything that he did. This also caused a conflict with Iommi. So Dio said, hell with this, and left with Vinny Appice. I'm going with you, dude. So they both left and wanted to form another band. So Dio and Vinny wanted to form another band, recruited a very experienced bassist, Jimmy Bain, who Dio met during his Rainbow years, and a very young rising star guitarist, 19-year-old Vivian Campbell. He simply named the band Dio. They went on into the studio to record their very first album together, released on May 25th, 1983, entitled Holy Diver.
Holy diver, you've been down too long in the midnight sea. Oh, what's becoming of me? Ride the tiger, you can see his stripes, but you know he's clean. Oh, don't you see what I mean? Gotta get away, holy diver.
All I could say is, wow. Killer album from beginning to finish. Powerful vocals, amazing harmonic, heavy riffing guitar and solos, awesome bass and drum playing. It's all you would want in a rock and roll album. Kick-ass songs like the title track, Holy Diver, Don't Talk to Strangers, Stand Up and Shout, and the hit single off the album, along with Holy Diver, was Rainbow in the Dark. This album is kick-ass. I definitely recommend it if you do not own it. It's a definite 5 out of 5 stars. Dio was immediately accepted into the heavy metal community as a solo artist. After touring for the Holy Diver album, they went right back into the studio to record their sophomore album, released on July 2nd, 1984, entitled The Last in Line. playing is just phenomenal. Oh, I'm sorry. Are we back? From the very first song, We Rock, to the last, another complete kick-ass album. Great tunes like the title track, Last in Line, Mystery, Evil Eyes, and much more. Another definite 5 out of 5 stars, ladies and gentlemen. During this tour, the band recording a live video in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, called Live at the Spectrum, which also was released in 1984. The band went into the studio. Which I got to throw this in here real quick, since it was Kenny, our good friend, the teacher from Kenny O'Rourke, his birthday. If you go to that, if I own the DVD and I have gone on it to look, Kenny, if you go to a certain time in that video, you will see Kenny in this first row right there in front of Dio. It's real quick. It's only about 3 seconds long, but you can tell it's Kenny. So I just wanted to throw that out there since it was Kenny's birthday yesterday. All right. So the band went into the studio to record studio album number 3, released on August 15th, 1985, entitled Sacred Heart.
Rock and roll children, alone again. Rock and roll children, without a friend. But they got rock and roll.
Another great rock album, not as complete as the first two, but close. Great songs like King of Rock and Roll Children, the title track, and Hungry for Heaven. Besides a few fillers on the album, I'll give it a 3 out of 5 stars. Dio, who was known for his great stage show and antics, really went all out on this tour, having a giant dragon on stage and battling it with his electric sword. Also, great light show with lasers and extreme pyro. You always got your money's worth at a Dio show. Always. Unfortunately, on the second link of the Sacred Heart Tour, where Dio decided to go everywhere he went on the first link of the tour, but during that, Vivian Campbell left the band due to differences between Dio and Vivian, and was replaced by Jafria guitarist and friend of Ronnie's, Craig Goldie. On July 21st, 1987, is the release of studio album number 4, which was entitled Dream Evil. Not a bad album, but not great either. With the departure of Vivian leaving the band, definitely affected the band's sound. The solos weren't as crisp, and the guitar playing wasn't as powerful as it was when Vivian was in the band. But of course, Dio's voice continued to be rock solid, as it did through his whole entire career. Songs like the title track and Sunset Superman, Could Have Been a Dreamer, and All the Fools Sailed Away are the strong points of this album. I'll give it a 3 out of 5 stars to be kind. The next album brings in another young guitarist, brought in another 19-year-old guitarist, the name of Rowan Robertson, and brings us studio album number 5, released on May 15th, 1990, entitled Lock Up the Wolves. A decent Dio album, but lacks all the enthusiasm that came out of the first 3 albums. I give this only a 2 out of 5 stars, only because it didn't interest me as much as the first 3 Dio albums. As I also will do for Dio's next 5 albums, to be honest, because the next 5 albums with different lineup changes and not having that magic chemistry that they had with Vivian Campbell, I would also give the next 5 albums a 2 out of 5 stars. And them albums were Strange Highways in 93, Angry Machines in 96, Magica in 2000, Killing the Dragon in 2002, and Master of the Moon in 2004. Dio also returned to Black Sabbath to record an album in 1992 called The Humanizer. Dio's last album was with the band Heaven and Hell, which was from the Black Sabbath lineup. And in 2009, made his last album, which was called The Devil You Know. This was the last album Dio made before he was diagnosed with stomach cancer in 2009. He passed away from the complications of this disease a year later on June 10th, 2010. Dio was a legend, and his voice will forever be heard in our ears. His legend will live on forever. Ronnie James Dio, one of the greatest rock singers of all time. This concludes our Rockipedia for tonight. We're going to take a commercial break, and we'll be right back here on The Shakeman Show.
Hamilton was adopted